I finally played Final Fantasy VI, and my favorite Final Fantasy games have definitely been shaken up. Yeah. Get ready for a chainsaw-wielding, maniacal jester-laughing, world-ending episode of NO-stalgia. The year is 1994. I was 7, 8 years old and SNESless, but was enjoying the absolute hell out of my Sega Genesis. My brother and I were lucky enough to have a parent that worked for Time Warner Cable and were beta testing the Sega Channel. Yes, that Sega Channel, for free. So I was catching up on a whole butt ton of classics, many difficult to find outside of the service, including Rise Star, Phantasy Star 4, Pulseman, and so many others. You just had to be there. Seriously, it was absolute magic. But even beyond gaming, it was a golden year for so many other areas of entertainment. Forrest Gump, The Lion King, Illmatic, Pulp Fiction, Ready to Die, Shawshank Redemption, Crazy Sexy Cool, and on and on and on and on. It was just a lot to take in, with absolutely legendary media entering a golden age. Music, movies, and of course, video games. As the primary opposition to the Blue Hedgehog, the Big N was showing that Nintendo still have a plethora of RPGs worth playing. While I was cutting my teeth on Shining Force and Phantasy Star games for the first time, Dragon Quest was the genre king in Japan. Even as 5 Final Fantasy games came and went. They had to write a law that you could only release Dragon Quest games on Saturdays because people were skipping work and school and all types of shit. So that's pretty intense. I don't know how you beat that. Yet, Squaresoft continued on and was quietly building up quite the body of work. Despite only releasing Final Fantasy I and Final Fantasy IV, titled as Final Fantasy II here in the States, they were just about ready to try their hand at another game making the leap across the world. Enter Final Fantasy VI, or 3, originally, stateside. Yeah, it's pretty damn confusing, and I'm glad they abandoned that numbering convention with 7. Can you just imagine a world where Final Fantasy VII was Final Fantasy IV here? How screwed up that would be? Come on. With nearly 3 decades since the day one of the most beloved Final Fantasies and the last 2D game in the main series was released, is it still worth playing right now? Let's go ahead and dive in. Final Fantasy VI is a traditional Japanese role-playing game, initially released by Square on April 2nd, 1994 in Japan on the Super Famicom, and as was commonplace in the era, was not initially a worldwide release. So many great games got trapped in Japan during this time period. Some are still there, and others are just now making it over to us. Yet with Final Fantasy VI, the SNES version dropped about 6 months later on October 20th, 1994. FF6 has seen quite a few different releases throughout the years, including a PlayStation version in 1999, a GBA version in 2006 and 2007, a mobile version in 2014, and the version I am playing today on Steam, the Pixel Remaster, released on February 23rd, 2022. A PlayStation and Switch port of the remaster should be coming out any day now as well. Upon its initial release, well, if you're watching this, my guess is you probably already know. Pretty much was immediately heralded as a classic, from the dark, mature story with some heavy themes, especially for the time, to the incredible musical score, cinematic cutscenes that felt a cut above, well thought out and beautifully connected gameplay, eye-popping graphics utilizing sprite scaling and the Super Famicom's Mode 7 like few games before it. FF6 was crowned the GOAT from the very jump. It was pretty much 9s and up from Famitsu, GamePro, EGM, Nintendo Power. Always great when a game gets its flowers in its time. Numerous awards from Best RPG to Game of the Year were thrown around, and I'm sure if the VGAs were a thing at the time, we'd be talking about it owning the record for a number of awards. Not only was it critically successful, it was largely a commercial hit as well. In the first year of release alone, the game would move over 2.5 million units in Japan and nearly 500,000 in the US, making it the entryway for many American gamers into the Japanese role-playing genre. Now, all said and done, throughout the various re-releases Square has put out throughout the years, the game now sits well into the 10 million mark in sales. Now, that's a whole lot of suplex trains. And the impact of FF6 cannot be understated. You know what? I'll take this moment to throw this aside out there. By nature, These nostalgia videos are spoiler land. They're a spoiler territory. So as a retrospective series, I feel like that doesn't necessarily have to be said, but because this game is so beloved and has a really crazy kind of twist in the middle, I do want to let you know. So I figured that considering this game is older than like most of my viewership on here, I think we should be cool to discuss everything. So cool.
All right.
Where was I? Ah, yes. Impact. This shit hit harder than a Cataclysm. This shit hit harder than a level 99 Phantom Rush. The game paved the way for great RPGs in the West to come barreling through, and for Square to continue to innovate and find peak form in the mid to late 90s. Without Kefka, I'm not sure there's a Sephiroth. Without the perfection of the Esper system, I'm not sure Materia or Junctions happen. Now, I know a few of us could do without that last one. Without the ATB battle system being refined to a Masamune shine, I'm not sure there's Mako or Blitzball or
Captain Bosch von Ratzenberg of Dalmasca.
This game feels like the game that launched 1,000 ships, air ships in this case. I can't say for certain because this was my first pre-Final Fantasy VII Final Fantasy, but this feels like the incubator of so many great ideas that they had from that point forward. And it's not hard to see how this game was destined for greatness. It's a veritable who's who of creators. It felt like a dream team. Development began shortly after the 5th game was completed in the winter of 1992, and damn, isn't it crazy how fast they could pump out classics back in the day? Hironobu Sakaguchi, the main brain behind the series, wasn't at the helm the way he had been throughout, as he had begun to take on more day-to-day roles as executive VP. He did stay on as a producer, however, and handed the reins over to 2 newer minds in Yoshinori Kitase and Hiroyuki Ito. Sometimes it really just takes a little fresh blood to get a new look for a series, and they seem to be doing just that. Sakaguchi did stay around to oversee development and make sure everything gelled well. It was a combination of the above and many others, including Tetsuya Nomura, to create this super memorable cast of characters, and it's a big one, still the largest to date in the series. But fuck all that, cause Nobuo Uematsu, ladies and gentlemen, let's clap for this man. Give him his flowers today because, I mean, okay, let's back up. I'll get into the music in a bit, but there are so many incredible pieces of music in this game, it's hard to even know where to begin. Like, I'm writing this script while listening to the OG OST on random, and let me tell you, as great as these sound, the reorchestrated music, you know what? Wait, didn't I say I was gonna get into the music a little later? Like, it's hard to stop talking about it once you start. Gotta wait though. So, anyway. Just with those names listed above, you can see what made this development so special. It also felt like a team that was really hitting their prime powers, and it congealed into a beautiful mixture of ideas and provocative new direction and design decisions. And one of the most provocative directions the game took was in the story itself. Both the words on screen and the way it plays out, this game took some big risks. The game begins with a now iconic introduction, with the text scroll alongside the Magitech armors walking through the snow. We are then shown the game's main-ish protagonist, more on that later, who is a former Imperial soldier named Terra. Her memory has failed her, as she has been experimented on and controlled via a device for some time now. She's eventually rescued by a group of rebels known as the Returners, who seek to overthrow the Empire. Terra soon discovers she has magical abilities and ends up going on to investigate an Imperial research facility. Now, during that mission, Terra meets a young thief named Locke, and together they rescue Celis from the facility. Locke and Celis. What's a more iconic duo than that?
I'll wait.
But as they make their escape, they are pursued by an Imperial general named Kefka, who is obsessed with obtaining the magical power of the Espers, beings who have been largely sealed away for a very, very long time. After some damn chemical warfare from this nutty jester, you immediately begin to realize this dude is a menace. In fact, we got a detour just for a second to talk about fucking Kefka, because this boy is straight up rude. The moment where Kefka tries to get you killed during the escape is something else. His laugh, man, that laugh. He reminds me a lot of another favorite JRPG villain of mine, Luca Blight from Suikoden 2. Just pure, sinister, brooding evil. Anyway, the group then continues their quest to find the Espers, eventually discovering that the Empire has been using them as a power source for their magitech. Magitech roughly allows humans to utilize a form of magic, often at the cost of their sanity. See that goddamn clown. The Returners launch an attack on the Imperial capital, but Kefka manages to take control of the Espers that are freed, killing his emperor and causing a massive explosion that destroys the world. Yes, you lose. You fucking lose. You lose. Kefka gets the power of the warring triads and destroys everything. Everything. He's turned into basically a god. A tower rises from the earth, and he goes and he sits up on it while everything crumbles around him. This was 1994. This must have felt like a revelation at the time. Like, just so different than anything that came before it. It's dark as hell, man. It really is. And I was kind of blown away. The world is torn apart, the party is dispersed, and it couldn't look more bleak for every single person on the planet. The game then fast forwards 1 full year and shows how the world has been transformed under Kefka's rule. Celes wakes up in a shack with Sid, who is very sick, more than likely dies. Celes tries to jump off a damn cliff to end it, but is unsuccessful, finds a ray of hope via a letter on the beach. She then begins to seek out all the others. The second part of the story is much more of an ensemble cast with lots of non-linear properties. Celes is sort of the center of everything, at least at the start. Now it gets way more open-ended and really is unique amongst JRPGs even today. Now 13 party members later, via a very asymmetric story path, whose primary focus is to flesh out the characters and give more backstory, and you are ready to form a plan to take Kefka down. The group eventually infiltrates Kefka's tower and confronts him in a final battle with the giant asshole himself. Kefka has become a godlike being and the battle is difficult, but in the end, the heroes emerge victorious. They escape the tower, and as it crumbles around them, the game ends with a scene of hope as the survivors rebuild their world. Wow, I mean, this story really hits like a ton of bricks. 30 years later, I was still blown away. And for as awesome and more traditional as the first half of the story is, the second half of the story is all about the overcoming of the human spirit through hope and vigilance and working hard to make something better for you and the people around you. It seems like not everyone loved this portion of the game from poking around the corners of the internet. Maybe that is mostly revisionist history, but it's surprisingly powerful and must have felt like an entire revolution of storytelling in the mid-90s. And it's so cool how much agency you have with your party choices and how the story gets passed around. Now, not everything lands perfectly and some things get goofy and juvenile and kind of stupid. See Cyan's little dream sequence, for instance. But for the time and even in the modern era, I'd say it holds up fairly well, like at least 97 or 98% of the time. It's pretty on point. You know what else holds up? How this game plays. If you've played any classic JRPG, you're mostly there. There are story scenes that play out, and between those, you can walk around towns to buy weapons, items, armor, and the like, as well as do combat using the much beloved active time battle system, first coined in the 4th game of the series, or the American 2. Yeah, I know, still sucks. But there are quite a few things that set this game apart from the others in the series. While there isn't a class system, each character has a unique trait that makes them all feel very different. From Sabin's blitzes to Realm's sketch ability, it's rare that any character feels very close to another. And there are 14 in total, many of which you can develop or leave on the sidelines, but just know you'll need to form at least a couple parties on a variety of occasions, so I'd say at least prepare a solid 8. Beyond the character-specific abilities, there is a wide variety of weapons and armor that differentiate characters even further. You can also equip relics to extend their skills, add defensive or offensive traits, or change commands entirely. And we still haven't talked about espers. These are how your characters learn magic. As you finish combat scenarios, you will gain AP, which goes towards learning the spells attached to each esper you've equipped. Espers vary in how fast they teach spells, and beyond the spells they'll teach you, they also provide a unique summoning ability once per fight at the cost of your magic points. Once a spell has been mastered through enough combat, you can begin utilizing it, regardless of if the esper is still equipped. Espers also give a variety of power-ups upon each level up, such as higher HP percentage buffs, speed +1, stamina +2. It can really be a way to further hone your characters and specialize them in ways that the game doesn't necessarily intend. The system gets really deep, as many of the best Espers don't really give you a buff at level up, yet teach the most powerful spells such as Ultima. So you can choose to either juggle Espers to maximize your stats, or just kind of let it ride. It's really as deep as you want it to go. Finally, the world is relatively large with 2 different variants depending on if you're in the balanced or the post-Kefka ruined states. So there's just so much to see and do. Now, everything isn't all sunshine and rainbows though. I did have some issues, many of them stemming from just the old school nature of this game. Encounter rates way too high, for one. As soon as I got Mog and could equip the relic to avoid battles, I did so pretty regularly. There are some serious difficulty spikes. Like, the game is relatively easy as long as you stay up on your shit. There are a few moments where it gets absurdly hard for just no reason. Like, the quick save feature in the Pixel remaster saved me a few times, but I can only imagine this shit was hell back in the day. Speaking of back in the day, I can see scenarios where people just never beat this game. It subscribes, you should too, well, excuse me.
What was that?
To the old school JRPG trope of like, not telling you what the fuck to do about 50% of the time. Load up game facts, folks. Like, something will just end and then you're standing there like, all right, now what? I definitely used a guide as it was pretty much necessary for me to finish this in any reasonable time frame. I will say though, if you do have the time on your hands, aren't easily frustrated, and have that itch to be forced to like search every corner, every conversation, and just wander, like this might be peak JRPG. All this considered, the game is a masterpiece and still a joy to play. It's engaging, at times challenging, and really allows you to play how you want. You can straight up break this shit from what I've seen, or you can play lower level and make yourself do hard work. There's really no wrong way to play FF6. Graphics in this game are also quite impressive for what they had to work with. So many of my notes mention how the pixel art does a surprisingly good job of conveying the message, resonating with you emotionally. Be it Kefka's laugh, the moments with Cyan and his family, Celis and Locke, and then battle stuff is wonderful too, with lots of emotive quality. I do have the benefit of never having played the OG or any of the other versions compared to this, so to me, the Pixel remaster feels hard to beat. Outside of some weird screen stutter, the various options for screen size as well as the CRT filter are all very welcome. I also love how they utilize the 2.5D effect from Octopath in the famous opera scene, giving it that diorama effect. Now, a lot of the joy in this era kind of came from like how your brain had to fill in the blanks. In the modern gaming landscape, everything is so finely crafted and honed. You don't really have to utilize your imagination as you watch. I bet everyone's Final Fantasy VI like looks and sounds a little different in their memory because it wasn't so explicitly spelled out to you with the graphics. The additional effects added for the remaster really create an ambiance, and I'm glad that's how I experienced it. From clouds overhead, the water shimmering, to lighting reflecting off the trees, it's exactly this threading of a needle between old school and new school that I appreciate so much. Now, maybe it's not your favorite version of the game, and I'd love to hear about why in the comments below. But it's hard to imagine a JRPG from 1994 looking better in 2023, at least to me. Now, okay guys, the music in this game, I could literally do an entire video on this music because it is truly exceptional, but I'll try to keep this succinct. This might be Nobuo's best work, and the reorchestration is absolutely sublime. Shadow's theme, Awakening, that damn Chocobo bop, and obviously Serpent Trench. Yeah, that's my cover of it in the background. Like if you fuck with the music. His music just never misses the mark in this game, ever. So many thematic through lines. You feel the emotion of every scene because of this music, and just goddamn heat, bangers left and right. Rescored with Uematsu-san's Blessing, this feels like the definitive version of this soundtrack. I know the SNES sound chip did its thing, the Game Boy Advance version tried its best. They all have their own flavors upon my listening. Plus I know many who played the original version of the game might disagree with me, but in the full spirit of nostalgia and the series as a whole, I think I can say rather vehemently, this is the way to listen to this game. The opera scene is now fully voiced and sounds absolutely brilliant. All the sound effects within the game are consistently great, with the familiar menu sounds all present and accounted for. And Kefka's laugh, once again, I'll mention it, it will haunt your damn dreams. Like, what a fucking soundtrack, y'all. Like, claps. Props to this man, he killed it. Just a tremendous sound package in general. You have Edgar and Sabin's theme, which will forever be burnt into my brain. It's just too damn catchy. And yeah, Luke, Locke's theme is just so elegant, majestic, and soaring. I feel like I'm above a damn cloud when I hear it. And I think it should be mandated that when you're in an airship, you hear some version of his theme, because it's just too much. I love it. Gun to my head though, I think my favorite theme is probably Shadows. Like, I just love that Western feel. It feels like it should be like in a Tarantino film. Now, with all that said, bet you're sitting there wondering, with all this gushing, is Final Fantasy VI worth playing today?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely yes. Yes, yes, yes. Emphatically yes. Don't even ask, yes. To be very clear, I was a Final Fantasy VII PS1 peaking JRPG kid who was my most impactful JRPG, turning me into a gamer that for a while pretty much only played them. And it led me to many of my all-time favorite games, most between the years of like 97 to like 2005. Now, prior to playing this game, all of my JRPG experiences prior to September 97 were outside of the Square world. Yes, that includes Chrono Trigger, so that one's on the list too. But this feels like the quintessential pixel role-playing game. Like, if I could just choose one game like this to put people onto, it would have to be FF6. Everything said about Final Fantasy VI was true back then, and 30 years later, still holds true. Maybe even more so. Time has been so kind to this game, as many JRPGs move away from the standard turn-based format and into more active ones, even in this very series. These can both remind us of a time forgotten, but also act as a powerful statement to why this is a timeless gameplay style. This game feels like the best distillation of this kind of game of the era, period. The story feels both unique and familiar. The 14 characters and how beautifully they are built up, the freeform second half of the game, the absolutely iconic music, the graphics, the feel, the lore of the world, the combat system, Kefka, this damn demented clown. It all still works so magnificently. Yes, it can overreach sometimes with what it had. It can be a bitch to find your way without a guide at times. Combat can happen too often, get a little repetitive depending on your grinding, and some things have aged a little worse than others. But if you have any interest in taking a look back into the peak of Square's powers to see what types of stories can be told with so very little, or are just curious about what all the hubbub is about, jump into whatever store you need to and pick it up ASAP. I loved it, and it may be my own nostalgia that keeps me from putting it at the very height of the series. It still has to climb Nibble Mountain for that trophy, but it would be hard to put it any lower than 2, maybe 3 in the pantheon at very worst. This game was ahead of its time, and some of us, like myself, are just catching up. Click here for more nostalgia videos, follow me on your social media platform of choice at TheGamersician, and hop into the TheGamersician Discord. Links are all down below. Peace.